Okay, guys, right. So this is, if you like, the penultimate, if you like, the second to the last key video. And the example in your textbook is brilliant for this. It's on page 400, on page 403. And here they are looking at the closing of a potentially, we are calling a potentially loss-making line. So again, like I've argued and said many times, it could be a loss-making product. It really doesn't matter. Now, as you know, again, marginal costing allows us to clearly see what the revenue for making a product could be. And I'm going to use one in your textbook. It's a great example. What the variable costs are, and then what the contribution is. Remember, I told you that fixed costs are costs that we just have to incur. In fact, sometimes even fixed overheads are allocated. So, for example, you might have, you see A, B, and C might be, and you're just allocating rent to those areas. So it might not even, because the idea of a fixed overhead is that it's not actually a real cost to making a product. I keep emphasizing this. It's not an actual cost. We almost allocate these overheads, so to speak. We just allocate them via some kind of format, whether we look at the past and make assumptions. The key point is that yes, we have to cover them, but if, like I said, there's a character in Dragon's Den, Tuka, or whatever his name is, and he just says to them, listen, come, I'll get rid of that for you. I'll get rid of this cost, so you can just focus, if you like, on the variable cost, because that's what the real skill is. Which means that the real skill is here, in making this. We should be careful when we find a product not doing well because of this, right? So we should try and help a good entrepreneur and eliminate their fixed overheads so that they can focus on variable costs, and we can bring those down, so to speak, and then we can help see if we can push that up and make as much contribution as possible. So let's look at these two products here in your book on page 403. I'm going to change this to an S and change this to a T and call this total, just to line up. And it tells you that product S is making revenue of 100,000, and it has variable costs of 90,000, and therefore it's making a contribution of 10,000. And we have allocated a fixed costs of 20,000 to it, which gives us, if you like, a loss of 10,000. Right. Now, so as far as we're concerned, when we look at this, we might think, oh, this product isn't doing very well, because we look here. What marginal costing allows us to do, or this layout allows us to see, is the product making a contribution towards fixed cost? And it is. So we can start asking questions about this 20,000. Is it correct? Is there a way we can get rid of it? Because the product in of itself is a good product. It is making a contribution. If you look at this other product is fine. It's making 200,000, 135. It's making 65, and then you have a fixed cost of 40 and a profit of 25. So, and we can see overall, which is what, like you say, what financial accountants just tend to see, is we just see this final figure of 15,000, and then we see the 300,000. The key point here is that we have more information and we can actually do something about it. Now, if you say, oh, I'm going to close this division down because the contribution is not much, that it's making a loss overall, well, I hope by you closing this down, you can also get rid of this fixed cost. Because you see, here's the thing. If you can't get rid of this fixed cost, if you can't get rid of it, all you're doing is transferring this fixed cost to this fixed cost. So you're basically just topping this up. And by topping this up, you're simply making things worse, because at least here you were getting some contribution to help you contribute towards this fixed cost. But now you've cancelled potential contribution and revenue that could come from here, and simply moved the fixed overhead onto T. So let's look. If you turn the page onto page 404, you can see that's exactly what they're trying to show you. That if you close down that other division, you've simply increased the fixed costs. Page 404, you've simply increased the fixed costs on the next page, and your profit becomes 5,000, if you like, overall. So you've lost out on that potential. The reason it's gone from 15 to 5 is because at least product S was bringing you a contribution of 10. So the key point is at least you know what's going on. Then of course, in terms of analysis, because this is a great evaluation question, in terms of analysis, by you closing a division, I mean, what's going to happen? If you think about it, let's look at page 404 and look at what they're giving us. Let's look at those examples. So it says the following points should be considered. So you need to be underlining and highlighting every single one of these points. The following points should be considered in the decision-making situation for closing a loss-making line or production line. This is page 404. First of all, check we're actually apportioning those fixed costs correctly. If you like, check those are really the fixed cost related, because remember they're overheads, they're not even directly related. So we need to make sure that we've checked that the fixed cost allocation is fair. Right, is it possible, if you like, to increase the price? Maybe that's the issue. If we can increase the price or do something, we might be able to, if we can adapt it. What can we do before, if you like, getting rid of it? Now remember, we talked earlier on about using marginal costing to make some products, if you like, actually loss makers. So that might not be a bad thing, because you might have another product that's helping you break even, so to speak. So there's no point just cutting off the product simply because, right, it's making a loss. No, it might be on purpose, right? And that's not a bad thing. Now, what are you going to do with all that, with all the people who work there, and what are you going to do with, if you like, the space? If you like, are you going to get rid of them? Are you going to now just have this space sitting there, if you like? Again, if you think about it, typically, once you start closing a department, you have redundancy issues, right? These are redundancy costs. So you're going to make people unemployed. It might not seem so much of a problem, but it might be a community that has helped build this organization. They are stakeholders, so you might even lose customers because you just feel you haven't done your calculations correctly, and in the end, you're actually you haven't just looked for a way to manage the fixed cost. The key point is the marginal costing helps us to break down and analyze what's causing something to do well or not. So again, sales price, variable cost, contribution, and we have this fixed overhead. We can talk about every single thing here. Sales price, what can we do to increase it? Variable cost, what can we do to bring it down? Fixed overhead, is there a way we can think about reallocating or looking for a better way, if you like, to deal with it? And the argument is, by closing down, are we just simply transferring the fixed overheads to the other products? And that's no use anyway if this thing is being a contribution. Right, so if you look on page 405, you can see they have some ideas here, and it tells us the general rule is that if contribution, when you're considering closure of a loss maker, the general argument is if the contribution is being made to a fixed cost, it should not be closed, right? And if no contribution is being made to a fixed cost, then yes, why not? You can consider it to be closed, because that kind of makes sense. If you have selling price and variable costs negative, so if you have negative contribution, well, it's not even contributing, right? The key question is contribution. So unless again this is a loss leader and it is on purpose that the selling price is lower than the variable cost for reasons that we talked about earlier on, like even the idea of you giving free fries as a waiter. There is no cost. It costs you to make the fries, but you're selling it for nothing. So you're actually making lower contribution. So we already know that this product is not contributing, if you like, to our fixed costs. It's simply drawing in customers, if you like. Okay, great stuff. So that's the video on that. And I'll make the final video, if you like, on target profits and the contribution to sales ratio. Okay, great stuff.